and non-negotiable commitment to its sovereignty, national unity, and territorial integrity as enshrined in the Provisional Constitution of the Federal Republic of Somalia, the Charter of the United Nations, and the Constitutive Act of the African Union. The federal government of Somalia categorically and unequivocally rejects the deliberate attack to its sovereignty and the unlawful step by Israel purporting to recognize the northern region of Somalia. The Somaliland region is an integral, inseparable, and inalienable part of the sovereign territory of the Federal Republic of Somalia.
As outrage spreads across the Muslim world over Israel's recognition of Somaliland, a move long considered diplomatically radioactive, the decision has begun to redraw geopolitical fault lines far beyond Somalia's borders. What Israel framed as an act of self-determination is being interpreted across Africa and the Islamic world as a calculated strategic intervention, one that risks militarizing an already fragile region. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced the decision personally, declaring Israel's official recognition of Somaliland and its right to self-determination, making Tel Aviv the first nation to do so. The bluntness of the announcement left little room for ambiguity. Israel is willing to absorb diplomatic backlash in pursuit of strategic depth beyond the Middle East. For Somalia, however, and for many Muslims across Africa and the Arab world, the move struck a deep nerve. Somaliland, though self-governing since 1991, remains internationally recognized as part of Somalia, a Muslim-majority nation whose territorial integrity has already been battered by decades of war, foreign intervention, and fragmentation rooted in colonial-era borders. What is Somaliland, and why recognition is so sensitive? Somaliland lies along the Gulf of Aden, directly opposite Yemen, overlooking one of the world's most critical maritime corridors. Formerly a British protectorate, it declared independence after the collapse of Somalia's central government. Since then, it has operated with its own elections, security forces, and institutions, but without international recognition. For Somaliland's leadership, recognition represents legitimacy after decades of isolation. But for Somalia and much of the Muslim world, external recognition is seen not as support for democracy, but as a dangerous precedent, one that legitimizes fragmentation and reopens wounds left by colonial partition and foreign manipulation. It is this unresolved tension between de facto governance and de jure sovereignty that has made Somaliland a geopolitical prize quietly courted by global powers. The Red Sea from trade route to battlefield. At the heart of this controversy lies the Red Sea, no longer just a shipping lane, but a strategic battleground. Nearly 12% of global trade flows through this narrow corridor, connecting Europe, Asia, and Africa via the Suez Canal. In recent years, the Red Sea has become increasingly militarized. The war in Yemen, piracy off the Somali coast, and attacks linked to the Gaza conflict have transformed the region into a pressure point where global commerce, regional security, and humanitarian suffering collide. For Muslim populations along its shores, particularly in Yemen, this militarization has been catastrophic. Years of conflict and blockade have pushed millions toward famine, turning geopolitical competition into lived human tragedy. Ports, airstrips, and intelligence hubs along both shores of the Red Sea now carry immense strategic value. Control over these nodes means leverage, not just over shipping routes, but over regional politics itself. Iran-backed Houthis enter the fray. Against this backdrop, Iran-aligned actors have moved quickly to respond. Yemen's Houthi movement issued a direct warning to Israel, cautioning against any military or intelligence presence in Somaliland. Houthi leader Abdul Malik al-Houthi declared that any Israeli deployment in the territory would be treated as a legitimate military target. He described such a move as an act of aggression, not only against Somalia but against Yemen, and a threat to the security of the Red Sea and the countries along both of its shores. From the Houthi perspective, Israel's recognition of Somaliland is not a diplomatic formality, but a hostile maneuver aimed at reshaping power dynamics in the Horn of Africa and tightening control over the Red Sea corridor. The message was clear: any expansion of Israeli military influence would be met with resistance. Israel's Africa strategy, security over sentiment. Israel's engagement with Africa has intensified in recent years, particularly as it faces growing diplomatic isolation in parts of the Muslim world over Gaza and Palestine. The strategy is pragmatic, security-driven, and unapologetic. In East Africa and the Horn, Israel seeks surveillance reach, intelligence cooperation, and access to maritime choke points that can counter Iranian influence and protect trade routes. Relationships with Ethiopia, Kenya, and now potentially Somaliland fit into a broader effort to project power beyond the Middle East, away from hostile borders and into strategically valuable spaces. Critics argue that this approach prioritizes military positioning over humanitarian stability, often disregarding Muslim public opinion and regional sensitivities. Recognition of Somaliland, they say, reflects not concern for African self-rule, but a willingness to redraw political realities to suit strategic interests. A region trapped between strategy and suffering. For Muslims across Somalia, Yemen, and the wider Red Sea basin, these developments are not abstract geopolitical chess moves. They intersect with daily realities of displacement, hunger, and insecurity. Each new alliance, each new military foothold, risks deepening divisions and prolonging suffering in regions already scarred by war. Somaliland, once seen as a quiet exception in a troubled neighborhood, now finds itself at the center of a global power struggle. Somalia's federal government on Friday issued a firm rejection of what it called an unlawful and provocative move by Israel, reiterating that Somaliland remains an inseparable part of Somalia's sovereign territory. Officials stressed that no external power has the right to redraw Somalia's borders under the guise of diplomacy or self-determination. While some voices attempted to frame the development as a gesture deserving gratitude or legal justification, Somali analysts warned that international law is instead being selectively invoked, fostering a sense of manipulation rather than legitimacy. Former diplomats and regional observers noted that Somalia has endured such external pressures before, often disguised as guarantees, but ending in deeper instability. The statement followed broader regional reactions, where solidarity with Palestinians was openly expressed. Yet within Somalia itself, parliamentary sources indicated there was no institutional support for the move, describing it as diplomatically reckless and politically incompetent. Questions were also raised about the role of foreign actors shaping decisions far removed from Somali consent. As critics pointed out, powerful states continue to treat smaller nations as arenas for experimentation, rather than sovereign equals. According to the Associated Press, US and Israeli officials previously confirmed that Tel Aviv had approached Somaliland over the possibility of accepting Palestinians from Gaza as part of a plan discussed during former US President Donald Trump's administration to resettle Gaza's population, a proposal that further fueled anger across the Muslim world. Somalia's Prime Minister, Hamza Abdi Bare, said his government categorically and unequivocally rejects what he described as a deliberate assault by Israel on Somalia's sovereignty. He stressed that the move constitutes a direct violation of Somalia's territorial integrity and an unacceptable interference in its internal affairs. The decision has triggered widespread regional outrage. Israel's recognition of Somaliland has drawn condemnation not only from adversaries, but also from key regional actors. Egypt's foreign ministry announced its rejection of Israel's move, reaffirming Cairo's full support for Somalia's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity. The African Union also dismissed any recognition of Somaliland, reiterating its unwavering commitment to Somalia's unity and warning that such actions risk undermining peace and stability across the African continent. Saudi Arabia voiced strong opposition as well, with its foreign ministry reaffirming the kingdom's full support for the sisterly Federal Republic of Somalia and rejecting what it described as a unilateral, separatist step that violates international law. Turkey and Djibouti joined the chorus of condemnation, declaring their total rejection of Prime Minister Netanyahu's announcement. Somaliland, a strategic port region on the Gulf of Aden, has exercised de facto self-rule for more than 3 decades, operating its own currency, passports, police, and military. With a population of nearly 6 million, the self-proclaimed republic has now received its first international recognition, but from a state that denies self-determination to Palestinians and faces accusations of genocide in Gaza. As global powers reposition themselves around the Red Sea, difficult questions demand answers. Is recognition truly about self-determination or about strategic control? Can stability be built by fragmenting Muslim nations already weakened by history? How many humanitarian crises must unfold before power politics face moral limits? And when diplomacy ignores the pain of ordinary people, who truly pays the price? The age of colonial flags may be over, but the age of strategic dominance, wrapped in legal language and blunt declarations, is far from finished. The Red Sea is no longer a periphery, it is a front line. And the choices made here will echo across Africa, the Muslim world, and far beyond.